Hello, my name is Jackie Morrissey, and I work with the Office of Curriculum and Instruction. I'm excited to engage in this spotlight on literacy with you as we dive deeper into Language Dives, an inquiry-based approach to K-8 language analysis with the EL education curriculum. For our session today, I would like to spend a few minutes talking about what language dives are, why do we need to engage our students with language dives, and also how can we effectively plan to lead language dives ourselves. So we're looking at three things here: the what, the why, and the how of engaging our students with language dives. There's a quote on the screen in front of you that says, "The limits of my language means the limits of my world." This quote, spoken by well-known philosopher, 20th century philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein, is a quote that resonates well with me. And the reciprocal of this quote is also true as well. Not only do the limits of my language mean the limits of my world, but also the expanse of my language can mean the expanse of my world. Let's hold on to this truth as we engage in this work with our students, thinking about how we can broaden our students' world and their thinking and their trajectory, all by expanding their level and their knowledge of language. So, as we engage in the what of language dives, let's take a look at the how language dives were developed and the reason and the purpose that we engage our students with language dives. One of the things that I want you to note here is that language dives are an opportunity for teachers and students to slow the pace of learning in the classroom down for about 10 minutes in the class. This is an opportunity for them to take a look at a compelling sentence from a complex piece of text. This is an opportunity for language analysis where teachers and students look at the syntax and the idioms and the expressions that are included in the sentence so that the students can really make meaning of what the author was thinking about whenever he or she was writing the text and what these words actually mean. So we're delving deeper into the language, into the English language to gain a better understanding so that we can grow our students not only in their speaking capacity, but also in their writing capacity as well. When we engage our students with language dives, one of the greatest benefits is it gives our students an opportunity to analyze and understand and practice the English language within a compelling sentence. They're doing this with their peers. And again, it is not very time consuming. You'll see that it can be done in as little as 10 minutes. Most of the language dives that I engage my folks with are about 10 to 12 minutes. They can be a little bit longer and they can also be broken up over days, but let's just keep that 10-minute marker as our guiding point for pacing. Some of the examples that show up in the curriculum that we engage our students with are going to be on the screen in front of you. So one of the first ones that I wanted to share with you occurs in kindergarten, module 3. Teachers are engaging their students around this sentence that you see on the screen. They bend their stems and leaves to follow the sun. This is a sentence that was taken out of the book What's Alive by Kathleen Weidner. And the students are engaging in this work in Unit 1 of Module 3, where they're learning about living and non-living things and the things that living things need to survive. Students are engaging in this language dive of this complex sentence that is also an adverbial phrase. What did I dare say that kindergartners are looking at and thinking about adverbial phrases? You better believe it. That's what this complex and compelling sentence does for them. It also gives our students an opportunity to look at the nuanced understanding of the word follow and how writers can utilize that, as well as gaining a deeper understanding of the purpose and the usage of these types of words in sentences. Another example that shows up in our curriculum is here in fourth grade. Our students in Module 1 begin the year studying poetry, poets, and becoming writers. In Unit 1, Lesson 6, they engage in their very first language dive. This language dive is really a focused expression on helping students to better understand the differences and the similarities that show up between poetry and also in prose. And then finally, here's an example for a middle school with our eighth graders. In Module 1, they were working on a module titled Latin Folklore. And in Unit 3, the students are working on completing a comparison and contrasting essay. In preparation for that compare and contrast essay, the students are analyzing the conclusion of a model essay where they're actually looking very closely at this juicy sentence that you see on the screen. My new version of the monster can help us to see that we live in a society of individuals from many different cultures and ethnic backgrounds, and we don't all look the same. As students are working with this sentence during that 10-minute language dive, some of the things that are going to come out of that language dive is reflection statements. They're going to get support and better understanding with independent clauses, dependent clauses, and also cause and effect relationships. So a lot of great value in engaging our students with language dives. And as you can see, the purpose of the language dive and the way that it is placed within that sentence or within the lesson, it's sandwiched strategically in the lesson to help move the students to that next learning task or that next learning standard that they're working on, but it also builds on contextually the things that they've been working on throughout the lessons thus far within that unit. As we are continuing to think about what language dives are, I also want us to think about what language dives are not. So language dives are not grammar lessons. They're not those traditional lessons where we're asking our students to pick out the nouns in this sentence and pick out the verbs. Sometimes that happens, but that is not the focus of language dives. What language dives are notices and wonderings about the language and the usage of text words and how those words convey meaning within a rich text. Language dives are not lessons on the parts of the speech, as I just mentioned, but what they are is an evaluation of syntax and idioms and expressions and language structures that show up in our language. And sometimes these are not always that common, but we want to make sure that our students understand how they're used and how they can effectively utilize those same different structures in their own writing. Language dives are not taught in isolation. As I said before, language dives are strategically sandwiched within that lesson so that they can actually lead students back to the guiding questions of the modules and also support them with mastering those standards that they're working on within those different units and lessons. Language dives are not random activities or optional filler tasks. They're not something that should be taken lightly, but they are a necessary curricular component for building language skills, literacy skills, and habits of mind. Folks, really, if we want our students to become better writers and better speakers and better communicators, we should definitely engage our students with these language dives. So I have shared with you the what of language dive and hopefully extended to you some value about why we should engage our students with language dives. Now I would like to show you what a language dive or a portion of a language dive looks like in action. I'm going to take you into a fourth grade dual language classroom at Lewis Elkin Elementary School here in the school district of Philadelphia. This is a short 1-minute video clip. As you're viewing this video, I would ask that you please pay attention to the specific teaching strategies that are helping to make this language dive live and be effective for the students. And I would also like for you to take note of the different ways that students are being actively engaged and interacting with each other as they're working throughout this language dive. So again, 1-minute clip, paying attention to teaching strategies and also student engagement activities. Take a look.
I want you to try to put them in the best order that you can. As soon as you're done writing this, thumbs up so I know that you are ready. All right, you're going to put these in the order you think they belong, okay? Muy bien. Okay, you can come here. Got it. Because this is a part of the Constitution.
Oh, this is the front part.
Ah, maybe. I like that you noticed that it has that ellipses, which means it's a continuation. Ooh, Jonathan. Love.
All right, friends, as I said, I wanted us to take a look at that very short video clip. It was only 60 seconds, but boy, was there a lot that was going on in those 60 seconds. So, some of the things that you probably noticed when you were thinking about the effective teacher strategies that this teacher was implementing, we probably saw that she was providing step-by-step directions for her students. She asked them in the very beginning, give me a thumbs up if you understand this and you're ready to move on, let me know. So step-by-step directions. She praised them, she affirmed them, she was excited about the things that they were doing and the work that they were accomplishing. Not only that, but she was also asking the students guiding questions or probing questions to help move them along. She's not giving them the answers, but she is facilitating the learning. She's checking in with them for understanding. She's moving around that classroom and she is leaning into the different groups and also the individual students, again, to make sure that they have clarity about the work that they are doing. And she capitalizes on those teachable moments. Did you see whenever she's like, maybe, and she pushes the needle with the students' thinking. So lots of strong teaching strategies are happening in those 60 seconds of the language dive. For the students, you probably noticed that the students had some independent thinking time. So questions were posed for the students, and there was an opportunity for the students to practice their work. When students are engaging in language dive, they go through that three very predictable step process of deconstruct, reconstruct, and practice. So there are times that students are working independently and times that students are working collaboratively in small group. With those small groups, you saw a lot of interaction, especially with that group that was up front. All hands were on deck. The kids were leaning in and they were actively engaged in the work, and it was collaborative work. There was not a silent kid in that room. Everybody felt like they needed to take ownership and lean in and actually be a part of that learning process. And for both the teacher and the students, did you notice everybody had their materials? The teacher had her teacher guide and she was walking around because that teacher guide is going to help support her with those strategic questions as she is leading students through those language dives. And then for the students had those sentence strips with them, but they also had their textbooks and they had different things that were accessible to them so that they can lean into those materials as needed. Everybody had what they needed to make that language dive flow. All of these things are very important to maybe to keep in mind of and as we are getting ready to plan our very own language dives. So let's talk about the planning process. We talked about the what and the why. Now let's talk about the how we actually engage in language dives. When I plan a language dive, and I have found this to be effective for a lot of teachers as well, when you begin to plan a language dive, it can be done in three simple steps. That's all. It is as simple as one, two, three. Step one, we want to make sure that we read the lesson narrative in its entirety. We're going to make sure that we pay close attention to things like the teaching notes, things like the supports for all students or the UDL principles, things like before the lesson and down the road. We're going to read all of those pieces that are sandwiched within this lesson so that we have a full understanding of what this language dive is all about and how it's going to support the learning of those different standards that we're working towards, again, for this particular lesson, and also how it points back to the guiding questions of the module. We're going to make sure that we read and annotate the language dive guide in its entirety. We want to make sure that we go through and we want to make sure that we pay close attention to that rationale that shows up at the beginning of the language dive guide. The rationale is usually about a paragraph in length, but that rationale will tell you that we're going to be paying special attention to the second chunk, or we're going to really be teaching and focusing on independent and dependent clauses. It tells us those things that we're going to want to hone in on, again, so that we can make them live. And also, as far as pacing is concerned, the things that we need to make sure that we're attending to. And then finally, the third step is to review the materials, review the slide deck. This is whenever we open it up and we make sure that those slides are going to flow well with the things that we're going to be asking and that we're going to be saying to our students so that we can have a better, more solid understanding of how we're going to guide our students throughout this process. We want to make sure that it's calling for a note catcher or those sentence strips, and how we're going to engage the students with the sentence strips. Are we going to write out big chunks for sentence strips that we're going to have our students to manipulate as those kids were doing in the video? Or are the students going to have those individual sentence strips like this that you see on the screen? So we're going to be looking at and thinking about all of those materials to make sure that they are readily accessible, not just for ourselves, but also for our students as well. We began with a quote, and I would like to close out with this powerful quote by the late, great Nelson Mandela, who once said that without language, one cannot talk to people and understand them. One cannot share their hopes and aspirations, grasp their history, appreciate their poetry, or savor their songs. One of the really wonderful things about Language Dives is that not only are we teaching our students how to talk to each other, but we're also helping them and empowering them with understanding, grasping, appreciating, and even savoring the language and the powerful meaning that it evokes whenever we have clarity and understanding about the text that we are engaging our students with. Thank you so much for leaning in and being a part of this exploration into Language Dives. There's so much more that I would love to share with you, and there is so much more that can be explored. If you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, or wondering, please feel free to email our office at ela@philasd.org. Thank you.